Howdy, team. Um, Coming to y'all tonight with a pretty heavy heart, so this will probably feel like a very different video than normal. I got a phone call about an hour ago that one of my students from, gosh, his name was Matthew, 5 or 6 years ago. He was in my group. He died today in a car accident. This is the second student in the last year that died tragically that we had before. I don't know that that will ever be easy hearing. Um, Not long before I got that phone call about Matthew, I've been on the phone with two other parents, kids from our youth group, who are just really, really struggling. And they're struggling because their kids are struggling because they just don't have everything at home that they need. Essentially, that's a simplification. But um, I'm telling y'all this not to have you pat me on the head and say, oh, TJ, we're so sorry. I'm actually telling you this just to say thank you to all of you. I'm so grateful for the fact that I get to do this ministry with y'all, and I want you to know, y'all are just so incredibly essential. There is no way in the least bit that Becca and I could do this by ourselves. There's no way that um, Jordan and Kate and I could do this by ourselves. And if you add Will to the equation, we're still terribly lacking. We desperately need your help. And so I'm so thankful that I have y'all on the team and that y'all are doing what you do, not just on Sunday mornings, but during the week too. Please, 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 please continue to love teenagers and encourage them and bless them every which way we can. Be involved in their lives because they need it. They don't always know how to verbalize their need for it. They may not even realize they need it, but they do. My kids need that. We all do. We need that from each other. So, because this lesson Sunday is incredibly good, and it's one of those that when the students hear what we're talking about, some of them are going to roll their eyes because they know this one, like they've heard this one before a lot, and um, but I just can't tell you enough. Like this really is the crown jewel of our faith. This is the bedrock of our faith. The fact that Jesus is God, that Jesus is our King, that's essential. That's what it all falls on. And we can never be reminded of that too much. We as adults can never be reminded of that too much. Just a couple of quick points about the lesson. It keeps mentioning that Jesus, the Old Testament mentions that Jesus is the Son of Man. It doesn't tell you where, though, specifically. So that's Daniel chapter 17, verses 14 and 15. That's where that comes from. And it was the idea that Jesus was the Son of God. It's a strange term, but that's why Jesus keeps referencing that. He's alluding to an Old Testament prophecy about himself. So, yes, Jesus did in fact claim that he was God. And he goes to Peter and he says, hey, who do people say that I am? And then he says, who do you say that I am? And this is where Peter says, you're the Christ. You're the Son of God. You're the Messiah. Jesus, of course, says, yes, you're right. And then he proceeds to tell Peter kind of the next steps. We would call them divine secrets, even. And then Peter throws a fit because he doesn't like the answers that Jesus gives us. Guys, here's the thing that maybe your students won't expect you to drive home, but I think is so essential. And it's good for my heart to hear this too. Whenever we recognize that Jesus is God and we proclaim him as our King, that means that he has the full right and authority. And by the way, whether we recognize Jesus as God or not, he still has the full right and authority to do these things. But when we recognize that Jesus is God, he has the right to tell us what to do. He has the right to tell us things that we don't like. He is going to tell us things that we don't understand or things that we don't agree with. But because he's God, it's not just that we get to follow him or we should follow him, but it's a privilege to follow him. And that's how we act on faith, is by following him even when we don't understand or when we don't agree or when we are terrified of the results. Jesus is calling his disciples, even at this moment, to a life that's greater. And that's in those verses about taking up your cross and following me. That's what we want to call students to. Jesus is so worth it, even and especially when it's hard. In fact, sometimes the fact that it's hard just shows us how worth it he is. But at the end of the day, just remember and keep driving this point home: Jesus is God. I'm going to post another fun video. Y'all can show it Sunday morning if you want to or not, but um, hopefully to help us understand this a little bit more too. Guys, I love y'all. I mean that. Thank you, thank you, thank you for doing this thing with me. We'll see y'all later. Bye.